Any other ideas or concerns, concern with the, with the draft environmental impact statement, Miss?
I have a question on what kind of a critical mass are we looking for public input to stop it? I mean, we need 10,000 letters, we need 50,000 people to show up, or
yeah.
I don't understand.
That's right, public pressure. So, towards the end of the presentation here, I've been asked to just share with the group what I called it the campaign toolbox. And we'll look at all the various tools that we have as a community to try and oppose the E2 alternative from being implemented. And so that, I think that'll fit in, we'll discuss those strategies. So Tim, you good to go? So hey, you all might know Tim Hatton. He's a longtime resident here in Moscow. He's an expert on Palouse Prairie, and so it's nice to have him today. Tim, thank you.
We got a Facebook person. Okay, that's good. This is my birthday tomorrow. And whereas I don't like the age count, it's far better than any alternative I can imagine. So, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to speak specifically about the potential impacts of these alternatives, high-impact alternatives on Palouse Prairie and some of the flora and fauna found there. I want to tell you straight away that for those of you who have been looking at the DEIS and the technical reports, it's a big document, and there's a lot in it, and I'm not all the way through it. I mean, that's simple. I'm still looking at it, trying to see what's in those technical reports and how that, and determine how that informed the DEIS. And what I'm going to present to you today is going to be just looking at some of the a few of the individual reports from the technical reports, just to try and give anyone interested in, I think you all are obviously, in the public hearing coming up on the 23rd, and then commenting subsequently on the DEIS on Feb 23rd, just trying to give you some points to think about, realizing that as we go through this, I'm going to be refining my points. I really want feedback from you all, and I just view this as a dialogue still at this point. Now on these slides, I've always tried to indicate where the information is coming from. Most of this information is coming straight from the DEIS, or thus the joining technical reports. And I put the page numbers up in the bottom right-hand corner. It'll be up on the top. But just a warning, some of the page numbers, they're a little funky because it gets a little weird in the technical reports, because these technical reports, there's a vegetation technical report, there's a wildlife technical report, they tend to have 4 or 5 different reports within them, because the Idaho Transportation Department contracted out to various organizations and teams of scientists to do these analyses for them, and they're in these technical reports as separate documents. So the page number gets kind of weird. So I do my best here, but just know that you might have to dig a little bit to kind of zero in on what I'm talking about. Palouse Prairie, why do we care about it? I think one of the most important points is that it has been recognized by several different scientific panels or groups of authors as an endangered ecosystem. And like most grasslands around the world, most prairie systems, and grasslands and prairie, frequently the term is used interchangeably. There are some differences there, but you'll hear me using them interchangeably as well. I mean, in this case, prairie for the most part. But all around the world, these prairie ecosystems are endangered because they make great farmland for the most part. They're in these areas where you want to farm. And so what we're seeing here is actually fairly typical of grasslands all around the world. They're all in great jeopardy. And with that, I'll just move on, take it from there. Rod? This is a map. This is presented again in the Vegetation Technical Report, map by Bailey. It just shows that gray area shows the one of the perceived delineated boundaries of the Palouse bioregion. And you can, it's hard to see anything there. We're up over on the Idaho side. We're on the very eastern side of the Palouse bioregion. It's referred to as the high rainfall zone. And in this zone, we tend to get what Dottmeyer referred to as meadow steppe vegetation, which is dominated by perennial grasses and forb species. Tends to be the richest, biologically rich flora and fauna of Palouse Prairie is found in this region right here, this meadow steppe habitat type. This is just a map that I do like to show. It's a little hard to see here. From a very recent publication. All the dark red areas show remnant Palouse habitat. And if you can see, you can see where Moscow is. I wish I had my pointer. Do not. Does anyone have a pointer by any chance? It would just help this presentation. Rod might have one. All right. But in the center, you can see Moscow, and then the line, the state line, and Pullman on the left. All the dark red areas are Palouse Prairie remnants, and in this map we show them as potential remnants. And what that means is grasslands in various stages of health were included in this analysis. So this also includes some grasslands that would be considered in deteriorated condition, as well as those highly functioning grasslands. What I love about this map, though, is, to me, it shows areas that have great potential for protection, conservation, or restoration. And this area down in the bottom right is where you can see Paradise Ridge, one of the largest red areas on the far right-hand corner. Right? Okay, so I just want to dive into one of these technical reports quickly. This is an example of one of the reports that ITD contracted out in preparation for this DEIS. It was done by Juanita Lichtart here at the University of Idaho and with the Natural Heritage Foundation. And she was tasked with essentially mapping species of concern or threatened endangered plant species found in the area, as well as mapping Palouse Prairie remnants, because that's where these species tend to occur. I'll say right up front, I think she did a fantastic job on this technical report, right? And they found, let me see this here. Looks like she found, these are the 11 species that the Natural Heritage Foundation views as plants that are very important. I think they refer to them as just very, very rare plant species. 11 of them in this area. She wanted to go into this area and do a specific inventory for the ITD to see which ones of these plant species are in this area, right? And what she found is 4 of the 9 target species were found in the study area. This included Palouse milkvetch, broadfruit Mariposa lily, Palouse thistle, and Palouse goldenweed. And she especially found that Palouse goldenweed was associated with grassland remnants, as well as many patches too small to be or weedy to qualify as remnants. And the reason I tell you this is a very rare plant species that's very abundant in the project area. Right? Now, while those plant species are species important for conservation for the Natural Heritage Foundation, with respect to federal status for as being threatened or endangered. There's only one species on this list, which is Spalding's catchfly, Silene spaldingii, that's known to occur in the area. And the important thing about Spalding's catchfly, of course, is being a T&E species, it would automatically kick in the Endangered Species Act, and all kinds of considerations would have to follow for protecting that species if impacted. But none in the project area, she didn't find any Spalding's catchfly. She found 4 of these other very rare plant species that the Natural Heritage Foundation keeps track of. She did not find any Spalding's catchfly, but she says in the document that all of these prairie remnants are definitely habitat where it could occur. They just didn't detect it in their inventory. To the best of my knowledge, it has not been detected in the project area since then as well. But it's just maybe a couple points you want to keep in mind, that there are some rare plant species found in this area. The Natural Heritage Foundation is keeping track of them. It's possible, very possible habitat for this T&E species as well, although it hasn't been found in the project area yet. Okay, Rod? This, unfortunately, you're just not going to hardly be able to see anything from this map with this light, but this is where Juanita mapped the prairie remnants. And she did it by a ranking system using the Natural Heritage Foundation's program's ranking system. They rank them from like 1 to 4, and color-coded them, and then projected them onto these topo maps. I do want you to know, if you go into these technical reports and look at these appendices, like this map, they're all blurry, every one of them. I mean, they're just blurry, and we should at least say to ITD, you got to clean these maps up, because they're important to see. I'll just point out up here is, the biggest red patch on top. That is kind of the top ridge line of Paradise Ridge. That's their top. That was classified as in their highest condition for a prairie remnant. And then scattered down through there, you get some high-quality patches from their own inventory, and you get other patches that are in various stages of, lower stages of condition. You can see that is the existing highway right there, and you'll see that the prairie remnants extend on to the west. When you get into the left-hand corner of the map, you're getting into the Bald Butte complex in there, and that's what you should really think about, this whole area from Paradise Ridge extending all the way to Tomah Butte as. It's a complex of prairie remnants. A point for consideration in commenting is, Juanita followed a procedure, a protocol that she applied to map these remnants. And basically, she didn't map anything that had a weed infestation level higher than 50%, and she didn't include any prairie remnants that had an area smaller than 1/10 of an acre. It's just a decision that she made. So some of the areas that the Lunian-Eigenbrod map showed would show definitely much broader areas of prairie than, for instance, this map here would show. Right? And if you get back to the alternatives, she definitely found that she's referring to it here as the E3 alignment, because that was, I don't know, back in 2005, it's the E2 alignment. It definitely has the greatest impacts to prairie. She found that it intercepts 2 moderately valuable remnants, class 2 out of 4 of their ranking system. And therefore, based on considerations of plant biodiversity alone, alignment E3 would be the least desirable alternative. I mean, flat out comes to that conclusion. Rod? Now, I wanted to get to looking at noxious weed effects from highway development through this area. This is another report within the vegetation technical report. So there's a series of reports. This one was prepared by Dr. Larry Lass and Tim Prather right here at the University of Idaho. Rod? And I'm going to say as well, with this technical report, I think it's really well done and worth reading. This figure just shows the three current. I think E2 is to the far right. Up the middle is C3. And to the far left is W4. Thank you. And right now, you can just see that patch of red. That's the upper ridge line of Paradise Ridge. Right? So they go through this process of identifying what's direct effects and what are indirect effects. And it's a pretty important point. And for their analysis, they determine that direct effects will be where the soil is disturbed by construction, indirect effects, and cumulative effects, and this is important, could extend 0.6 miles from the new highway for most weed species. So here they say could extend 0.6 miles, so a little over half a mile from the highway zone, weed species could spread, right? Could you go back one?
Okay.
It's all right.
Oops. Oh, okay, where do you?
You could get it by previous right there, actually.
Okay, previous.
Yeah. Okay, you were good. Go ahead, go forwards.
Okay.
So, again, here we see our three alternatives. And what they did was, in this analysis, they did an analysis of weedy species known to occur in the area and weedy species that could be introduced into the area. And that yellow zone shows that 0.6 mile area of weed infestation around the alternative. And this one is laid out across C3, the middle route. And you can see where you can see how broadly this extends. And I'm going to come back to this, but I'm going to say that these authors actually come back and say that it is highly probable that there will be weed infestation from a list of weeds into the 0.6 mile zone on either side of the highway, and that no mitigation measures will be able to stop them in the short term, maybe in the long term, maybe.
No.
Rod, next.
No.
Here's the E2 alternative, folks. So here's the E2 alternative. That red patch on the top there, that is the top of Paradise Ridge. That is the pristine, the most intact section of Palouse Prairie and the high rainfall zone on the top of Paradise Ridge. And you can see here a little more clearly some of those prairie remnants coming down off the shoulder. And what you can see right here is, based upon their analysis, there's going to be weed infestation from highway development right up to the top of the ridge. Let's go right up to the top of the ridge, 0.6 miles on either side of the highway.
Tim,
Yes.
the map shows it going into the large patch at the top of Paradise Ridge.
Yep.
I mean, once it's in a patch of prairie, it's going to be the whole thing, right?
It's totally.
It's done.
Yeah. Now once weeds become established, it's a really hard fight. Anyone who's involved in restoration or anything else can tell you that. Yes, please.
Since we've interrupted you, are we still on Juanita Victor's report?
We are.
Okay.
Yeah, we are. Again, I believe she did just an excellent job with this report. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. I just in error. This is Tim Prather and Larry Lass's report. Okay. This is Tim Prather and Larry Lass's report. And I wanted to read you the conclusions here. There's two slides. Regardless of the route selected, weeds will invade the site before desirable vegetation can be established. Based on the analysis provided in this report, the area of impact for direct effects will be where soil is disturbed by construction, and indirect effects and cumulative effects would extend 0.6 miles, that yellow swath that we see, from the new highway for most weed species. That's the first two sentences of their conclusion, and Rod, next slide. Here's their last sentence. And this language to me says it all. Hopefully. I mean, anytime scientists start off a sentence with hopefully, we got problems as far as I'm concerned. Hopefully, in some small measure, the number of introductions and their potential spread to critical prairie remnants can be reduced. by implementing prevention, monitoring, and mitigation. But what they're saying, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And it's going to be up into that zone as far as they show. That 0.6 mile, that is rooted in science. It's going to happen.
What's the source of the infestation? Is it trucks?
The source of infestations is just the construction process itself, things coming in on the machinery, and then disturbing the soil. If there's a weed, if there's a seed bank already there in the soil, disturbance generally will get and create germination. And also, then we're just talking about this whole idea too of disturbance just favors weedy species. It favors weedy species. Weedy species they're adapted to disturbed areas. That's how they will come into a niche. So these, if you read this technical report, there are dozens of pages by Tim Prather and Larry Less on then mitigation measures and measures to help prevent the inoculation of weeds into the area during the construction phase, and then ways to try and control the weeds once they're into the area. It's a beautiful report. My concern is that I don't see a lot of jiving sometimes between what's in these technical documents and then the final conclusions in the draft EIS. Because I will say now that in the DEIS itself, and I'm going to have to go back and find the specific language. But they say basically because there's already weedy species in the grasslands surrounding these prairie remnants, there's not too much concern about highway construction and the infestation of new weeds into the area, which I believe is a highly flawed logic. It's a highly flawed logic because we are concerned about either greater densities coming into the area. We're concerned about new weedy species coming into the area. And I got to tell you, I didn't see anywhere in Tim Prather and Larry Lass's technical report where it said that. I don't know where they came up with that. I think that's some language in the DEIS that we should look at really carefully and question them on. Because I think this is a major, major concern. Rod? And I'm just going to go for 5 more minutes. I'm going to go fast because I know we're pressed on time here. And as I've already acknowledged, there's just so much in this report. I've only gotten so deep into it. There's a lot there. This is from another technical report in the wildlife technical report. And so this one was prepared by the state of Idaho Department of Fish and Game. Rod? I took an excerpt from one of the tables in the DEIS body itself that lists all the wildlife species and where we might, and the potential effects to those species. This is just an excerpt. I start on the top there with the Palouse giant earthworm and work my way down because I am essentially an invertebrate ecologist. There's a whole list of vertebrates and ungulates up above that. This is just where I'm starting at. Rod? Now, the Palouse giant earthworm, it's really interesting. They determined that there's going to be no effect on the Palouse giant earthworm. For those of you who don't know, the Palouse giant earthworm has no real status because there was an effort by certain individuals in this room, rightfully so in my opinion, to try and get the Palouse giant earthworm as federally listed as threatened or endangered because it's so rare. But that was kicked out from the Fish and Wildlife Service. Not kicked out, but they made a determination that there wasn't enough information, not enough data on the species to conclude if it was endangered or not. I mean, literally, there's not enough information out there. It's so rare, there's not enough information out there to determine if it's endangered or not. But this is the thing that gets me. In their first sentence, underneath where it says determination of effect and rationale, no effect, they say there have been no reported occurrences of Palouse earthworm in the project area. Now, I gotta go back and look at this document. I see project area. All I know is when I look at the reports by Larry Lass and Juanita Lichthart and stuff, they're including all the way up to the top of the ridge and that whole ecosystem around there. Maybe this is a different project area they're talking about. But if it's the same project area where those other investigations have occurred for weeds and for rare plant species, then by God, the Palouse giant earthworm is there. It's been found, I believe, 4 times in the last 3 years. Cass found one. Twice last year. And before that, I believe they found 2 up on the ridge itself. And that was Jody Johnson Maynard's team from the UI. With their electroshocking, they found 2. So it does occur here. And it needs to be pointed out strongly in any comments that you make. Unfortunately, again, it has no status, but it was included in this report because it's acknowledged that there's local concern for the species and there's academic interest in it. That's the way it's expressed in the report. So might as well go back to that and just say there is, and this very, very rare species is entitled to protection. You guys have miscategorized this. And it also says no remnant Palouse plant communities, suitable habitat will be affected by the project. Baloney. We just saw those maps of what the weed infestation is going to be. It's going to go all the way up to the top of the ridge. That's Palouse giant earthworm habitat. Next slide, bud. And so I just make a few suggestions. For instance, for the upcoming public hearing, you might want to mention that potential effects from the project on the Palouse giant earthworm will result from habitat loss, habitat fragmentation, and habitat degradation. Because for just about every other species that that is considered in this report, those are the 3 factors generally that they're concerned with. And rightfully so, I agree. No different for the Palouse giant earthworm. Right? There are...
Tim, can I have a question?
Yes.
Just to take Boise's position, if we have 25 people come up and talk about the Palouse giant earthworm, are they going to just sit there and roll their eyes and go, oh, geez? And is it a credibility issue? I mean, it's like guns. We have so much time to play our cards.
Sure.
I just don't want us to come off as the crazies from Palouse, talking about a worm that nobody's seen recently, or that
We have seen
I mean,
recently.
I know. But if you're
Right
Boise, you don't know that.
Right.
I just wonder politically.
It's a very good question, and thank you. I believe, you know, from my interest and my perspective is, and I'm with the Palouse Prairie Foundation as well, and I can simply say that we're concerned with the effects of this highway on this ecosystem, and especially Palouse Prairie, and this is a very important species found in Palouse Prairie. So I think it's worth our time. I guess the extent that you want to, emphasis you want to place on it, you know, that's, might be up to the Paradise Ridge Defense Coalition or anyone else who's commenting to decide for themselves.
Would you call this an indicator species for the prairie?
You know, all I can say is, in this region, the first Palouse giant earthworm found in, I believe 20 years, was found in a Smoot Hill, which is prairie. And then we had 4 more individuals found up on Paradise Ridge. Palouse Prairie, but also forested habitat integrated up there. So I would have to say that it's not going to occur anywhere where you have disturbed habitats. I mean, it's a deep burrowing species. It's just not going to happen. I would think it's certainly, from the data we have so far, associated with Palouse Prairie, but it's associated with some forest habitats as well. That's the only answer I can give you on that one right now. Right? Previous slide. And just, again, I'm an entomologist, so I'm interested in some of the, they have identified some insect species that they list as potentially minimally impacted in the area. They leave it in their DEIS, and they have some mitigation recommendations. I think this is an area where I'm certainly going to be paying attention to. I got to tell you, I'm not intimately familiar with these species here. So I've got to go back and do my homework and find out exactly more on the biology of these species and where they're talking about, because the stoneflies and the mayflies, they're aquatic, they're in the streams. You know, they develop most of their life cycles in the streams, and as adults they emerge, they mate airily, and then they're back into the stream. So those are all associated with streams affected by these alternatives. And the last one, actually, these grasshopper species are associated more with the prairie. Right? And then I'm just going to finish off by saying there's absolutely no discussion in this DEIS on pollinators. I know why it gets back to this issue of there's no federally threatened or endangered insect pollinators in the area that I am aware of. And so there's absolutely no discussion of them. But I'm certainly going to comment on it because these flowering plant species, almost all of them need pollinators to reproduce. That's the fact. And so there's no discussion of potential impacts on pollinators in this area. I have done bee studies on Paradise Ridge, and I can tell you there's up to 100 species of bees on that ridge and that area in there. Very rich bee fauna. I would have to consider that anywhere where you're going to be showing these impacts of like this 0.6 mile zone on both sides of the highway for weed infestation, you already have it laid out as habitat that's going to be degraded. I'm concerned as to what that is going to do to pollinators and potentially then the reproductive success of all those flowering plant species that up on that ridge. Again, affects habitat loss, habitat fragmentation, habitat degradation. That's what we're going to be seeing. I think I'm going to end it there. I've got stuff on ungulates and vertebrates as well, but I'm going to leave it there. And if there's any questions.
Are the mitigation costs included in the cost of these alternatives? Because if not, the E2 cost could go way up.
That is a good point. And a good question.
We should look into that.
Do you guys know?
I do not know, but from a fiscal responsibility or fiscal transparency perspective, that's a really important question.
Well, I guess the other question is, I don't have too much experience with this, but are they really going to do this mitigation?
I think that from what I've seen in the recommended mitigation measures is going to be that the effects will be temporary. And, you know, here we're talking about for these aquatic insect species, we're talking about the road crossings over the streams. So they're talking about, you know, trying to do that in a reasonable and responsible manner, and hopefully the habitat will be okay afterwards. I can't give you any more details on it at this point. I'm not sure.
I wonder if we can go back to that slide about the middle of the presentation that showed the 0.6 mile distance from the E2 alternative and the effect of that.
Yeah, you gotta go back up.
I wanted to make a point about that.
Oh, so go on. You gotta go the other way, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
So in the summary of the EIS, they present it as there are 14 loose prairie remnants within 1 kilometer, or approximately 0.66 miles, from C3, and E2 has 24 remnants within this distance. So maybe E2 is twice as bad as C3. But if we look at this map, the most important prairie remnant in probably, what do you think, Latah County? I don't know, but it's extremely important now. Is directly, was indirectly impacted, but it's going to be impacted by the alternative. So that statement is very misleading. I think there's a lot to work with here. Quite frankly, but this is the scary thing. I mean, if you look at that DEIS, you'll see that all the major environmental organizations are against this E2 route. Period. Flat out, they're against it. Because there's a lot of reasons why they should be. It's going to have a lot more environmental and biological impacts.
Including Fish and Wildlife.
Including Fish and Wildlife Service. Fish and Wildlife Service, EPA, Idaho Fish and Game. I mean, The reasoning is there. It's political, so we do what we can, I guess.
I have a question, I don't know if one of you could address this. In the DEIS, it says, it talks about how many stream beds each route will cross, and also talks about, I think, how many feet of stream bed will be impacted.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make any sort of qualitative remarks on that. And I'm wondering if, using how many feet of stream bed, the C2 route seems to have the most, but if it's already an existing farmland, how many of that is culverts that are already just like filled with sediment and are the stream beds for habitat? And, none of this is mentioned, at least in how far I've gotten into the DEIS.
Sure.
None of this is mentioned. So there's really no qualitative summary, and I'm assuming that some land is going to be already more degraded than others.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I can't answer that. I don't know. That's a good point, worth investigating. I say there's so much worth investigating in this DEIS. Yes?
Somebody mentioned costs, and all the groups that are against the eastern route. Are the costs of litigation included in the projected costs of the various alternatives?
No, absolutely not.
Has that been suggested? Why not?
I can't answer that. I can't. I'm just not knowledgeable enough to answer that question. What I've seen with a lot of the discussion so far is there's recommendations by the agencies in the technical reports on mitigation measures, including some quantitative amounts. But only some of that translates into the final DEIS document. So there's a lot of details to pull out there. And I can say for when you get into the vertebrates and the large animals, moose, elk, and deer, it seems to me, from my reading of the technical documents, there's no real sound protocol for mitigating for losses of large animals like that in an open highway stretch like
you
this.
You mentioned political reasoning or something like that. Who's politics? What are you talking about? Who's politics?
I don't know. I mean, why is E2 being recommended when we see here?
Are there investigative reporters doing them? Why isn't somebody looking in?
I think that's a really good question.
Good question.
ITE should be pushing this alternative.
It's a very good question.
8 years later, they spit out the same project
What? Somebody
in
must be
their draft
behind it.
environmental impact statement.
Probably some misguided.
Professional opinion-wise, says E2 is not the way to go.
Well, identify them. Who are they?
There was a,
Good question.
That was
Good
my
point.
reason too. I mean, if these two routes cost about the same to construct,
Yeah.
what's going on here? Is there some of these people who own the land and the one that the state favors going to make a bunch of money on?
Exactly. Why did Chamber of Commerce tax?
What's the deal here? If they cost about the same, obviously if one costs a lot more than the other, you would wonder why the transportation department was in favor of the least costing. But if they're about the same, what's the deal?
Yeah, good question.
Also,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of a possibility that truckers don't see this map and don't realize that the shortest route actually goes up and down, and going up a hill, that you waste a lot of energy.
Well, is the elevation gain, is the elevation differences addressed?
Actually, all the alternatives do go up Eisenhower Hill there in the southern part. I don't know, I don't think there's an analysis in terms of fuel usage, in terms of climbing, coming back down, and all that stuff.
Going immediately out of town, if you turn left, you go uphill. Look at the other side of the bridge there.
Yeah.
Anywhere.
And you said, these rounds are the shortest, but again, it's only 0.09.
And the police, everything's uphill.
There is
yeah, there's a, I was able to read some postings on a Lewiston Tribune website, and one of them referred to Spokane papers articles from the original 2002 issues on this, and they reference a landowner who's related to, I'm not sure if he was a county commissioner, I don't think he's a commissioner, but someone else involved, in local politics, and the landowner would stand to lose somewhat from the, what is it, the CPA, is that the local?
Central.
Yeah, the central, yeah. And they claim that, the political claimed that wouldn't make any difference in his decision, his recommendation, but the
Sounds like a
Spokane paper-
lead worth following up on.
Yeah, I guess I could email that.
Yeah, please do.
If you- I'll email that to you, Tim. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes. Okay, Ellen?
I just have one question for Sam.
Yeah.
I'm just curious because with the spread of weeds and most of the down in the out, southwest and west, is there any mention of?
Yes, there is, and thank you so much. In fact, yeah, they mentioned 4 or 5 species of weeds that are almost certainly going to spread further than the 0.6 mile radius from the road on the east side of the highway. On the east side of the highway, and that's up the ridge. So in fact, there's that technical report found that not only are these weeds going to go up to the top of the ridge, they're going to go further, and that's just by almost, fairly rapid dispersals from the sounds of it for a select number of species. And they were concerned with that eastward direction. I'm not sure if it was winds or if it was just the slope or what, but they definitely mention it.
Well, I just have to wonder if there's any mention of pollinators if somebody doesn't have their eye on that ridge for wind power.
For what?
Wind power.
I can't say.
Well, they usually want open ridges, not the trees.
Yeah, I'm Mr. Funes. I hope this wasn't asked, but in the UI recruitment and generally Moscow awareness, I was wondering if there's a tourism study or attractiveness of town study that shows the economic impact of this perception of us having this beautiful Palouse. I mean, right now we're talking, okay, save the Palouse, save Paradise Ridge, which seems a very botanical, maybe people who are interested in the environment. But the last 5-10 years, the amount of books published, Meyer's calendar, there's starting to be a significant economic impact, and also indirect, I think, economic and UI, interest impact of keeping these types of vegetations. I was wondering if ever anybody looked into the business side of this, because then that would be a clear argument against pretty much straightforward destructing, in terms of weed infestation, the one most beautiful, still intact patch.
That is a great question and comment, and I think that is worth looking into for sure, and I think you're probably right. I can tell you that there's a paper that was done by the Igert students over at the UI by Sharon Donovan et al., in which they did some focus studies around the area asking residents what is important about this area to you. And I can tell you that one of the things that came to the very top of the list was just these views like Paradise and Kaniak and Tomer, and these areas that had very significant special meaning to people in the area. And not only that, but they found that there was, not surprisingly, there was great overlap between these areas that are rich in biodiversity and that are rich to people for cultural reasons and for all the reasons of growing up in that area. That's where they can go out and walk their dog. They look out there, and that's a beautiful study by Donovan et al. That is one that we should draw upon.
So I guess connected to that, I'm wondering how much you buy, who is a significant, definitely half of Moscow, how much they've been involved in this, or if somebody like Rabbi Larsen or so might be interested in being connected to this question.
Yeah, good point.
One more comment. I just realized that since there's a safety issue about that route, and also I think there might also be a gas mileage issue with that route, I was wondering if professional truckers or other professional drivers in the area would support us if we went with a safer route.
Well,
I mean, that's a legitimate question.
back in the old days of this project, Bennett, who has a sawmill in Princeton, outside of Princeton, favored E2 because he could get his lumber he felt he could get his lumber to Lewiston in the valley there quicker and cheaper.
think,
Well, the basis,
I think
the
that's still
reasoning,
driving
I
this
don't know.
proposal today. I really do. I think this is an industry-driven alternative, and that's something we can talk about further. It's just my personal opinion based on experience.
Hey, so, Ms., I thought your question was a very good one, and it's a good segue for our next speaker. Many of you know him, Cass Davis. Cass Davis is going to talk about Paradise Ridge, the place. Him and Erica have lived up there for 13, 14, 15 years on the other side of the ridge. 17 years. 17 years. And so we figured Cass hunts, he hikes, he skis. Him and Erica probably know the ridge just as good as anyone in our community. And so Cass is going to come up here to just share some stories, experiences, and kind of talk about the place that it is. Because essentially the place doesn't have a voice unless people give it a voice. So Cass Davis is one of those voices. So come on up, Cass.